Okay, we are live with our January 15th Hangout. We got a couple special guests, Coach Jim Tante from Prairie Meridian, Coach Ed Pendowski from Carmel, and our rankings guy, Mike Reiser. We had some great discussion. We already just had a nice little discussion about rules and such, so we're going to kind of get in on first thing. We're going to talk about some ranking stuff. A lot of not a lot of changes lately, but we've had 120, Mike. What's going on with that weight class? I know that's probably one of your funnest to rank right now. You have like 6 kids on the watch list that probably could come away with a state medal and make you look not as good as you are.
Yeah, that's good though. I think that's always a good thing. 120 is just one of those weights where it's so much depth that some of the top guys are trading losses. Obviously, Saturday at the Lake County tournament, Black and Reitz wrestle, and Black pins him. Turn around Tuesday night in the makeup, and then Reitz pins him. So,
Wow.
so four and five is really like kind of toss up. Coach Tante's kid Elliot, has had these tight matches with Bailey, but he's looked great all summer. He looked great all year, and now Bailey's beat him twice, so Bailey's won. And all these guys are kind of going to be wrestling some really tough competition coming up. Sawyer Miller's going to be wrestling Hatch. Bailey just wrestled Elliott. Jeremiah and Black are going to wrestle again Saturday. Huckins and Babcock.
Bocock.
Yeah, Bocock. So, I mean, this is like one of those really deep weights where, like you said, there's a lot of guys even on the outside that are in the mix, and then even a guy from what everyone's saying is Ferguson's going to be in there also from 26. But he's not wrestling. He's not in the rankings right now. But when he comes back, everyone said he's going to be a 20-pounder, so you got another guy with 2 losses in 2 years that was 5th last year.
Yeah, that's definitely. I know this is one fight you're racking your brain the most because the good thing is everyone's wrestling, but the bad thing is they're all trading losses with each other. The only 2 that are unscathed right now, I mean, I guess 3, Bailey, Miller, and Wrights, or actually Hudkins, sorry, are all unscathed. Hudkins has been out, so it's kind of hard to see where he's at. And then Miller hasn't wrestled as many of the top guys. He'll get a couple this weekend. And then Bailey, has a pretty good list of guys he's wrestled and beaten. He's beaten Elliott twice, Holmes, Starks, Owens, good guys. So definitely a fun weight to watch.
I mean, there's a couple other guys that are unbeaten in there. Kaufman's still unbeaten. Jake Hartman's unbeaten. Hatch is unbeaten. Perry Meridian's backup 120 could probably be in the mix. He pinned Starks, pinned Roth, pinned Cummings. So Huckins coming back. He dropped from 1 and then he dropped off because he had the hand surgery and now he's back. I have him at 6. He could win. That's a guy that could win the tournament. That guy can. I think this is a weight that you can wrestle it every weekend and you'll have a different winner every weekend.
That's a very interesting weight.
Even if you just have Black and Wrights wrestle, they're going to pin each other one of the time. That was pretty surprising this weekend. I saw that and I was like, he pinned him, and then come back Tuesday, you're going to think that he's just going to, Black's going to run over him again, and then Wrights pins him. So that's going to be fun. You get round 3, and whoever gets ahead, this weekend. So you don't have to change your rankings quite yet.
No, Black was a lot bigger than Jeremiah at the county. So the way he just kind of ran him right to his back, reloaded a half and stuck him. And then I got the video from him, and they wrestled Tuesday, and Black's up 3-0. Jeremiah high C right to his back, sticks him. So just great matches.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the match with Corny and Braden is obviously we've come out on the bad side of it, but as a fan of the sport, they've been awesome matches to watch. It's Braden, man. Braden's just a seasoned kid for being a sophomore. I mean, and you got to look at Braden's only lost 1 match in high school. I mean, he lost in the semifinals. I mean, very deserving of where he's at right now.
Yeah, definitely. He's one kind of people seem. I mean, I assume that you overlook him because he was 3rd last year. Even that's nothing to be ashamed of. He lost to He lose to Reitz, or no, he lost to Conrad. But I mean, close match right there to the kid that was a Fargo champ. So one of those kids that kind of got shuffled in the mix early. He was kind of low and then just kind of plugged away. Luckily, he's had some good matches and proved that he's top dog right now. But as the way this weight class goes, it's you're not number one for very long. You get kind of a number one jinx here, it seems.
I was nervous that he was going to lose because that everyone that was number one had something happen, and I'm like, man, is he going to be one for a week? But obviously, he did well.
Yeah. The other weight that we're seeing lots of changes at, 170, Dylan Liddy's back in number one where he started in the preseason. He beat Dylan Jackson and Jacob Stevenson just this past weekend. So I'll let you. This is actually turned out to be probably one of the more exciting weight classes to watch. When you have the top six there, all can probably beat each other on any given day.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Preseason, I kind of took a little bit of heat for because Jackson was returning semifinalist in the ranked. So I think people were like, how can you rank this guy? He lost at semi-state, wasn't even at the state finals, number one, and obviously he does a lot of summer stuff. He's really good. So to see him come out and do well is kind of good for me because when you take that heat, it's good that these guys back it up.
Didn't he major Stevenson in the regional though?
Last year?
Yeah.
He beat him last year for sure. I don't remember if it was sectional or the regional. Was it a major? I thought it was like a 6-2.
No, I think it might have been 8-2 or 9-2, something similar to that. And Dylan's always been good. He's had some great runs in the off season too.
Oh yeah.
Very, very, very talented kid. He got spladled a couple times last year in the semi-state, and modern day tends to do that sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, that was kind of surprising. I know he's made a jump. He was 145 as a sophomore, and then jumps up to 170 for Fargo that year, which you don't see. And he ended up getting fourth at Fargo. So definitely, he's one to watch out for, especially at that weight. And he's gonna have to see Stevenson 2 more times, and right now he's 2-0 against him, so it should be a good weight. You can't throw out Mammalati, Dylan Jackson. He's kind of having an up and down season, but he just beat Stevenson last week, so he might be getting a little bit revving up towards the end of the season. But and then you have Ben Harvey, who he's tough as nails. That Harvey family is always tough, and he started out at 113, so he's just getting used to wrestling a little bit bigger guys. So I like watching that weight. We were talking about it preseason. I'm like, man, this is gonna be a fun weight.
Well,
he really came in.
You got Sopko in there too. Who's split with Mamaletti, I believe, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's beaten. Who else? He beat. Did he beat Harvey? Who else did he beat? That I know that was a pretty good win, in the off season.
Yeah. Him and Liddy were overtime at Folkstyle State. So Cameron Jones is a really good kid too. So Jackson jumped. He had the loss to Lungenbill and then Jones, and then he jumped up. Obviously, you beat the state champ, you're going to jump. But Jones only has a single loss. Kane ended up losing. He was undefeated. Then he ended up getting caught and pinned the other night. As I said, caught and pinned. Everyone's going to give me junk about that. I think Hunter wrote. But he was cradled up and pinned, so he was pinned. But man, this is another one of those weights where I just feel like all these guys are really good. They could all trade wins and losses,
Yeah,
definitely. With the state champ in there, who's lost to the guy that was a semi-state guy, but it's an All-American, Harvey, who beat him, and then they've split. The turnaround for Mamalenti from the Harvest Classic to the Al Smith was crazy, and I just think that kind of tells a lot of what Harper and them do at Penn, because it looked like a completely different wrestler. So, and Sopko's an all-goer. I think he's going to be the number one at Maryville, but I thought he was number one at Maryville last year, or number two at Maryville behind Osborne. And he's majoring a kid and gets pinned in the ticket round, and that kid goes on to be a semifinalist.
Yeah. What any other good big rankings changes or updates that you saw last week?
we took Ferguson out, and we talked about that a little bit. Just a couple of guys that hadn't been wrestling, and so we took him out. We also took out Myron Howard Anderson, but they said he's coming back. So we got a message real quick, said, yeah, he's going to give it a run for sectionals, but I know he was banged up. But haven't heard nothing on Ferguson. So early on we heard that, he was a little banged up. He was going to be at 120, but hasn't been in the lineup. The Cathedral Perry match had a lot of good matches last night with Tante and Ben Stewart coming back. So Ben Stewart moved back into the rankings, and that was a 2-1 match. Just a lot of stuff like that. Guys coming and going.
Yeah, finally, kind of looks like things are solidifying themselves. Guys are getting some matches in. Got a lot of tournaments, so that's always good to get those. You see those results because the tournaments usually you're going to see the better kids wrestle each other. So, next thing, anything else? Any other things you want to talk about as far as rankings, or are we good to go to our next segments?
No, we're good.
I want to know if the Perry kids staying at 95 or going to 82.
We're thinking about 220.
So we're not going to know till the sexual seating meeting? Are you going to hold those brackets for until Friday?
When I find out, I'll let you guys know.
That's good to know. The main reason I brought Coach Pendowski and Coach Tante back on, we had a pretty good discussion on the preview show for Team State. So they did a lot of talking, had a lot of good ideas and a lot of input. They've been around the block a couple times, and they definitely aren't going to shy away from their opinions. So definitely I want to bring them on because there's some interesting topics that we've discussed, and either on the board or just privately, semi-privately, I guess, and definitely want their opinions on them. First thing, Team State. Both of you guys were there. I was there also. Kind of tell us a little bit about what you, Jim, this was your third year there. You've been at Westfield. You went to Ball State. Tell a little bit about your likes and dislikes of the event this year versus, I guess, compared to the last couple of years.
Well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is just, thank you to everybody that put in the efforts that they put in. I mean, I know, from what you guys have done to what Trent's done and selection groups and people putting the thing together physically, the officiating crew, getting one of the top-notch crews there. I mean, I think the event is, at this time, with the effort that's involved, is as good as it can be with what we've got. I think you're always looking for improvements. Westfield, was very gracious, I guess, for giving us that place, and then now we move on to Ball State. I'll be honest. I was talking about this the other day. I still picture, and it's going to be hard to ever beat. I still picture walking into Center Grove, and it's almost the perfect setting for a dual tournament that we had with how the room there was for the crowd, and how you could put your crowd in a section, and so I'm comparing that to Center Grove, so it's going to be very tough in my mind of what I enjoyed at Center Grove to match it. But the effort level, it was obviously matched, and the work that the people put into it. There's some things, my wife being there, my family, from a fan standpoint, there's some things that they probably would like to see a little bit different. But for what they have and where it's grown to, I think it's pretty good right now.
Yeah. What were your opinions on the event this year, Ed?
As I walked through it, I'm glad Trent McCormick was involved in a lot of that stuff, because I've got a pretty good idea how organized that is, and I went through it all and just went, man, this would be insane to try to put all this stuff together. And it was run very, very well, and I've been was lucky enough to be in the other tournament that was at Center Grove, and I think until you can get a way to get it done that all the teams can have a chance to be in it. Which, I mean, it goes into that other, it's an impossible situation to try to do, to try to get everybody involved in the tournament. But running it the way that it was run, it was phenomenal. Watching good teams wrestle against good teams, and everybody thinks they're going to win at all levels. It's just great. It's great wrestling, and so to see that stuff around, I can't imagine the work that you guys and the rest of the Coaches Association put together to make something like that happen, and it's good for the sport. And so, anytime you've got that happening in a spot, that's positive for everybody.
Yeah, I caught myself a couple times when we were coaching. You'd hear, on the Perry, when Perry was wrestling Franklin or somewhere else, you'd hear the crowd go nuts and try to look up, but you couldn't obviously see anything. So like, who's wrestling? What happened over there? Obviously something big. Someone big win and stuff. So definitely was cool to be in that kind of environment and kind of trying to look and find see what the big fuss was about on the other mats. I definitely agree with you guys that it, well ran. The facilities, I wasn't sure exactly what to think of the facilities when I saw, when they first announced it. They were a lot better than I anticipated. Still in the end, it'd be cool to have everybody in the same area. That you can sit and watch 1A through 3A all in, from your seat, which would be, you'd be able to see that a little bit better. So that's the one thing that's my big sticking point, and that's one thing I'd love to see it somewhere like the Pepsi Coliseum or somewhere even up here in Fort Wayne where they had 24 mats in the one arena this past weekend, so, and with decent amount of seating so people can watch and stuff. So that's my one biggest thing. Do you guys have any suggestions that you guys would like to see? Any things that could be tweaked or anything?
Well, I think that what you just brought up was, the way Center Grove was set up, you could see all the way down the mats when you were wrestling, and you could see the things that were going on, and from a crowd standpoint, they could see that as well. So, I think that could be the next step. I mean, it sounds like, and again, I'm not on the inside on some of this stuff, but it sounds like the marriage between Ball State and the tournament went pretty well, from what I understand. But so I don't know where that's headed. I've never been at Fort Wayne in that Coliseum, but it sounds like if you can get 24 surfaces down and everybody can see in the seating, that to me would seem to be something that needs to be looked at, because I think that just makes the tournament even better. And you're right. I mean, I remember the days at Center Grove when we're looking over at Cathedral Mat and somebody called Willis for a slam, and everybody's checking that match out, and you were into all the matches going on.
No, yeah. The best one there was when the Columbia City kid got in a fight with the Mishawaka kid or the Franklin kid. I don't think anybody on our team was watching our match anymore. We were watching those two slug it out in a corner. Everybody being able to see everybody. I can't imagine trying to put something like this together and what it takes to get the Pepsi Coliseum, or I've got a hard time getting Carmel's Fieldhouse, and so to get Ball State or someplace like that, I don't even know what goes involved in stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's my biggest. I mean, my thing since it started, is always treat it. If you treat it like the Super Bowl, people think it's the Super Bowl. Whether and that starts with a facility, great facility. I mean, I know they said the Pepsi Coliseum might be a little bit out of the price range. It's still, it's still a dream that be able to, have something like that. I mean, all the kids. I mean, if State was at, Newcastle or someone's local gym, it wouldn't be as prestigious as being at Banker's Life, that kind of stuff. And even at Center Grove, that's a great facility. I only made it down one year, but it was pretty fun because just the crowds and it was a great event for everybody there. We did get joined by Dane Stilling, who I did pronounce his name correctly for once.
No problem.
He put all the kids to sleep. So, do you have any ideas or things you want to talk about for Team State? And you didn't get to make it this year due to the flu running through your
Yeah,
house.
due to the flu. No, I think just if we do settle into Ball State, I think the more consistent we are with that venue and the more familiar people are with the venue. For example, our local radio station had a hard time. A lot of people wanted to hear Belmont and Adams Central coverage, and the the radio guys weren't sure where AC was and where Belmont was at the same time, and they ended up not being able to broadcast any of the Adams Central match, and that was really a shame because they ended up winning the whole thing. But like you said, the setup of being in separate gyms really sort of hindered any sort of local media coverage, and I saw even a comment from Broadcast Sport, who used to do a lot of video coverage, basically saying that that wrestling's not something that they cover anymore because it's too hard to do, because it's too hard to follow. So I mean, if we can make progress in those areas and get more people to know about the tournament, it's just going to keep growing.
Yeah, definitely. I'll show you guys. I do have a picture of what the Coliseum looked like last week. This is the one arena where they had 24 mats, and they have like probably about 15, 20 rows, looks like, of seating on each side. So a lot of teams can fit a lot of, you can bring all your fans and they can be right there. So we would only need like 12 or 16 mats, so not quite as many, but it'd be a pretty cool thing to have it in there. Great facility, parking, and all that kind of good stuff. So on that topic, we'll move on to our next one. This one I think is going to be the more fun one. Dual meets. I know we kind of got on this a little bit, and both Jim and Ed were in the realm that we need more dual meets. Right now we have a minimum of 4 that we have to schedule as a staff. So what do you guys like? Tell us a little bit about why you think we should have more, and how many more should we have?
Go ahead, Eddie.
No, that's a tough one to say publicly, because I had a guy ask me the other day. He's like, "Hey, I'm starting a youth wrestling club in a little bitty school. What do you do with your little kids? Do you teach them 20 different moves, or do you teach them 2 and get good at 2?" And so I said, you can coach wrestling a lot of different ways, and I know our opinion has always been that wrestling and dual meets are great for the sport, and it's great for your kids, and it's an awful lot like the Belmont radio station people. It's easy to follow. Grandma can show up and not know anything about sport of wrestling and know that they're going to wrestle each other, and as soon as these 14 matches are done, they're going to have a winner. With tournaments and separate mats and first available and things like that, start to get difficult for your buddy who you play football with to come and watch. And so when you start having dual meets, you start making it a little bit easier to follow, but it's also, you can put your school behind it, your team unity, and those types of things. And another one that we picked up as a coaching staff a long time ago is wrestling, being at school from 4:30 in the morning to get to get on a bus at 6 to go, wrestle somewhere and wrestle 5 times, getting home at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Man, that's a long day. And if we look at, the number of forfeits that schools have, the people trying to grow our sport at a level, we've got to look at not going to get the Ed Pendowskis and the Jim Tantes. I mean, I like wrestling. I want to be around all the time. But if I'm trying to go get that outside linebacker to come be a part of a wrestling program, and somebody tells them that we spend 6 weekends a year, where we're in a gym somewhere for 15 hours at a time, that gets hard to sell. But if you go, hey, we're going to go wrestle, we're going to get on a bus, we're going to go wrestle, we're going to get on a bus, and we're going to come home, that's a little bit more realistic to what other people are like. Now, I think there has to be times when you've got to go put it out there on the line. I'm in the Team State tournament. We got on the bus at 6 in the morning, and we got eliminated early, and we were home at 6 o'clock at night, and that's awesome. But to do that every weekend, that doesn't make much sense to us, and that's not a direction that we're going at all. I added it up last night. The Carmel kid, all going into sectional, is going to have 21 matches, because we're dropping the 5 super. We don't want to wrestle 5 times in a day unless it's something special, because it's too much wrestling in a day. It's too much time.
how many matches? When I know you haven't. This is your third year back. You took about 10 years off. How many matches were you guys getting at Portage in your last few years?
We
Like your
would
kids, like
we,
or sectional.
we were close to 50. I remember Warner had 50 when he won in '97, and we got to where we'd go into the sectional with around 28 to 30, because we did the same thing. We dropped super duels. We picked up extra dual meets. We wrestle every Wednesday, and we made a big push to make it fan friendly. From the way that we wrestled to wrestling dual meets, just making it fun to come watch. And I think if the sport is done right, it's pretty exciting. And if you can, take some time and build a schedule that has, quality rivalries and the right teams wrestling each other, the sport's pretty fun to watch. But I think we're lying to ourselves if we don't look in the mirror. It can also be pretty freaking boring if it's not played right.
Yep, I agree. I know, Jim, the one thing I know, and we talked before we started, a couple years ago, I don't know how many matches Jared McKinley had, but I know he had probably almost 200 career wins. Now you're scaling that back. Go a little bit into detail what the thought process was on that, scaling the matches back, not getting that many.
Well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go into a little bit about the fans. I know Eddie hit on that football player that we're trying to get to wrestle and that kind of thing. But last night we're wrestling Cathedral, and when Braden Bailey comes out to wrestle, their crowd's chanting #1, and then when Brandon James comes out, our crowd's chanting #1. I mean, then they're going back and forth. Our athletic secretary came to her first meet. She traveled to Cathedral, came to watch us for the first time this year, and she came running down to the office this morning in the locker room to tell me how cool that dual meet was and how much fun it was. She would have never have done that, to sit there on a Saturday to watch us wrestle 5 teams. You go back to our place a few years, every other year when we blow up the big Falcon and we got the spotlight, and Cathedral had the spotlight over the mat last night, and I mean, you can't do that for these all-day events. Like Eddie said, you got to do it every now and then. There's going to be times, but building these rivalries, that's how I grew up. Right? When I wrestled at Southport under Chauncey McDaniels, you wrestled a few Saturdays. Everything else was Bloomington versus Southport, or Warren versus Southport, and it was a big rivalry, and people are yelling across each other. The fans are chanting this and chanting that, and I mean, that's fun stuff. So the more we can get that, the problem becomes, developing mat time for maybe your kid that's not as seasoned as some of your better kids. But, in today's wrestling, these kids wrestle year-round. They're on the mat all the time, so it's not quite as important as you would think. Getting 50 matches is not near as important as making sure that it's fun for the kids, they enjoy it, and it's fun for the fans, and we can develop those rivalries, because these kids are going to wrestle in the off-season anyway. We don't need that many matches during the season.
We were in the process this year of trying to get the Carmel Westfield dual meet that we had yesterday during school, and our administration was all about it, because we've got a study hall that's every other day, that's 90 minutes long, and our administration was like, yeah, if we can get it going, and then the next year go to Westfield for the day that they have their study hall. I mean, because Westfield and Carmel are, less than 10 minutes from each other in a drive, and we were pretty excited about that. It fell through this year, but we're going to bring it back up. But trying to get something like that, I mean, you throw 4,000 student body in a gym to watch a dual meet, those are things that kids will remember forever. And I told our administration that would instantly change our program, instantly change it of what the student body thinks of what goes on in a wrestling.
Absolutely.
I think they do that, and I assume maybe I want to say it's in Michigan somewhere, and I've seen something that they wrestle. And I've seen it some other places where they're wrestling during the day. They obviously it's study hall or something. That's really cool. I like that idea.
We actually did that in high school. When I was in high school, we actually did that. and that's it lasted. We did it one time. I think we wrestled Bloomington South, and Chauncey McDaniels, my coach, was from Bloomington. And we did it one time, and it was awesome. But we used to, back then Southport hosted the state finals, so the fans around that area were pretty versed in the sport of wrestling. So it was pretty neat to do it, though. And you had a lot of support from the student body.
We'd probably have to keep it a secret from the Department of Education, though, so I probably shouldn't say it online.
No, that's your problem, because you're going to drop test scores, Eddie.
Nice. So, in the, I guess we did kind of touch on the super duels and long Saturdays. What are you guys doing now? You guys added more duels, or like single duels, or are you guys gonna, try to set the super duel at 5 matches, maybe do 3 or 4? Is that kind of what you guys have been, looking to do these past couple of years when you've been changing your schedules up?
Well, we have one date that's the week before the county. It was always a Quinn duel, and that's been a triple duel now for this is the 3rd year going.
What the hell's a Quinn duel?
Well, yeah, that's where you wrestle a whole bunch of times. Some of my bad kids get pinned way too many times, and I don't like it.
Come on, Jimmy, I'm not a Southsider. Tell me what a Quinn duel is. I never heard of that.
You never heard of a Quinn duel?
No, a Quinn duel.
Yeah, Quinn duels.
All right,
they didn't talk about Quinn duels up in Portage?
What the hell's a Quinn duel?
You wrestle 5 times in a Quinn duel. What did you guys call it up in Portage?
You wrestle. I don't know. You just wrestle 5 times and go home. A Quinn deal.
Yeah. It's not some kid's name. It's not Quinn like some guy's name. It's a Quinn duel.
I don't know if it's an Asian thing or something.
No, it's not. It's Southside, man. It's Southside stuff.
I got you. It sounds Southside.
But you should know that Portage is the south side of Chicago, so
That
you
must
should
be
know.
Latin. Must be Latin. Quinn duel.
I just thought you meant 4 matches instead of 3, a triple, and we call them, yeah, nights. So, that's one thing, I definitely, it's enlightening, especially for both of you guys who had, when you guys, a few years ago, you guys were, looking to get the 50 matches. Now it's, that's not the mat. It's about getting the right matches, and, the duels are very important. I know I was at the Cathedral versus Perry about 3 or 4 years ago, and that was it was pretty intense, and big crowd. You guys ran out underneath the Falcon. I think you should bring that to state. Just run out under, and, everyone have their Falcon or their Greyhound or whatever they want to run out under.
That would be fun.
Joe, I think that you kind of say more about that. I don't think it's a cookie cutter answer. I don't think I can tell you how I feel. I don't think you can get you need 21 matches. If you have 21 matches, then that's enough, because it's going to change, because your opponents your opponents are going to change. A school down the road from you is going to be pretty good for a while and have 65 guys on the team where everybody can get a match and everybody could wrestle there one time and go home. And our program is going to change over time. And I know we were pretty excited about the way our program was set up. When you go, a couple of bumps here, a couple of misses here, and all of a sudden now, we kind of found our spot where I wish we had more matches. I was talking to O'Neill last night about, we were both looking at it. It'd be kind of nice to go, catch some smaller schools and get some quality wins instead of, the situation we're at now. So, I think it's one of those I know what we try to do with ours, which is driving administration crazy, is go, hey, this is what we need 2 years from now. This is what we're going to need next year, because I can tell you going into this season, where we're at right now, it would have helped our team tremendously if we'd have got a nice little super duel, or a Quinn duel. We would have had a Quinn duel where we wrestled 3 or 4 lighter teams and got some of our kids that are new into the lineup some matches, get your one quality one and go home. There would have been a lot of benefit to having that situation. And so I'm not going to sit here and say I think that's wrong, that happens at other places. I think it depends on your situation.
Yeah. One thing I was meaning to bring up. I know one at Carroll, we're kind of in a fun situation after this year. We pretty much, us and Homestead, pretty much got kicked out of our conference, so we're not going to have a conference, which all of our 4 scheduled duels are all conference teams, and all but one, well, 2 of them we're dropping just because they're not full lineups and stuff, and the other one, they're just going to fill up their 4 matches with conference matches, and the only one that's sticking is Belmont. And now we got to find 3 more matches. We have 2 solidified right now. We're still trying to find another one. We have a couple teams interested and stuff. But the biggest thing we're having a problem with, if we're trying to look at teams we have already we don't wrestle during the season, but also have full lineups and are within half hour, 45 minutes instead of driving an hour, 2 hours to get a dual meet. So that's one thing I know we're having trouble with in a couple of years. If we're back in the conference, I don't know if we're going to have that trouble. But at the same time, it's just more or less, we wouldn't mind having, if there's 6 teams in our area that we had good duels with, we'd probably schedule 6 duels. But it's one of those things that, I mean, like you said, it's our air. It's depends on your situation for each team. We'll go into our next little segment, and definitely interesting, especially I'm interested to hear their opinions on this. And I'll let Mike and Dane chime in also because they've probably have some information on this. The state of Indiana wrestling. I know you guys both have been around the sport for quite a while, seen a lot of changes, good and some bad. Kind of like, in terms of quality of wrestling and the coaching. I'll let Jim, you can start, and then we'll go from there.
Well, this is it's kind of a loaded question. Now you got to find out: are we talking about Greco? Are we talking about freestyle? Are we talking about folk style? On the national level, obviously we've done some pretty cool things here the last few years. So I mean, what we did last year in Fargo, I thought was awesome. It was great for Indiana, and we've got some really good kids wrestling all over the country. Indiana has made a name for itself here lately, but that's not to say that years past we didn't have some studs as well. But I think Indiana wrestling is definitely on the map. When I was a young kid 1,000 years ago, Indiana was known for basketball. I think our kids are getting a lot of respect, and they're getting recruited from a lot of top-notch schools across the country, and our kids are proving it on the mat, especially in the folk style and freestyle area. Greco right now, and I know Eddie hates Greco. He don't even know how to spell it. But and we're struggling in that area. But you got to like what Indiana's doing. You got to like what we've seen in the last few years in Fargo, and we definitely have kids wrestling at some top-notch schools across the country. Our kids are being highly recruited, and hell, our kids are winning national titles in the NCAAs. So I think that speaks for itself right there.
Definitely, I agree that the NCAA translation is always good, and even last year we had a lot of success at the D2 and D3 level, which is always a good sign that we have kids that place in those tournaments. A couple years past we didn't even have any All-Americans in those levels. So, what do you think, Ed? What's your answer to the loaded question, I guess?
The loaded question of the off-season stuff is it's hard to measure, and the reason I think it's hard to measure, if we're using Fargo as our measuring stick, it's that's not the same as Fargo was 15 years ago. In 2000, after the high school season ended, he wrestled in Freestyle State and Northern Plains and Central Regionals, and you go to Fargo. And the beginning of about the middle of the 90s, they started, high school nationals was something that was important, and then Super 32 and Flow Nationals, and then USA Nationals, and they started all of those tournaments at all these other places. Where now Fargo probably is not the same tournament that it was 15 years ago. and with the talent of the percentage of the top 10 people in each weight class out at Fargo. And so, then how do you measure that? I mean, if we were a bunch of guys sitting around just looking to argue of who's better, the Cowboys or the Steelers, you can pick pieces apart of that of what really are the top 10%. And so if you use the NCAA tournament as how's Indiana going developmentally, it's been great of what's going on with the top kids. I think the exposure that those guys are getting at the college level and coming back home is a big deal. And I don't like Greco-Roman.
Can you spell Greco-Roman? That's
I can't.
No, you can't spell it.
It's too boring to spell.
That's one thing. I mean, people ask about like the tournaments. What's the best tournament? National tournament they send a kid to and stuff. And there's really not one. There's not one that you can point to anymore that really is a true national tournament. The only one that I can see really, the Super 32 is probably about one of the better ones. But that's also a preseason tournament, and they don't even have full periods, so it's hard to gauge a true like folk style or even freestyle wise. Like you said, Fargo isn't what it was 15 years ago. A lot of the seniors aren't going anymore because sometimes they're already at school and they already have everything locked up. They don't have anything to wrestle for. So I'll let Mike. He's looking kind of sleepy-eyed over there. Any comments on kind of? Especially, you've been doing the rankings. You've seen a lot of the top kids and stuff. What's your kind of opinion on the state of the wrestling here?
Like high school wise, I think it's real top heavy. I think that I'm seeing. I feel like I see a lot more forfeits than I used to, and even like the Al Smith bracket, there was a ton of forfeits in there. I think a guy got a forfeit to the quarters where I don't feel like that was happening every single year. And, some of the programs are down. I was at the Lake County tournament this past weekend, and I was just talking with some of the other guys that were older, and like Hammond schools and a lot of these other schools would have a couple of really good guys that would be able to compete, and now it's just kind of you run through forfeits and you're through the quarters to the semis. And I think they have talented guys coaching there, like guys that had success, and we were just kind of running through some of the guys that were there. But also, like you're losing some of the national guys to other states now too. Lowell had a couple kids that were really good, and now they're in Illinois. Maryville obviously had the Stevensons that were Portage kids, and then there were Maryville kids. Now they're at Apple Valley. So, do I think Bobby, Stevenson, and Gable have still been very good wrestlers if they stayed at Maryville? Would they have been ranked number one? Maybe not, because they're not getting that exposure that maybe Apple Valley is wrestling, these bigger tournaments. But I think that they do a good job. I think that we've done it well. I think having a promotion for the smaller schools where guys are now you're getting more kids that are going there, so you're seeing kids continue their career, which I think is always going to be a good thing.
Yep, I agree, definitely. Dane, any comments on? You've been an interested observer for quite a few years.
Well, I think what Mike said is I think the gap between the top 5, 6, maybe 8 schools and the rest has grown in the past. I don't think you're seeing a whole lot of number 15, number 16 teams in the state beating the number 3 or the number 4. I think that gap has grown. I guess I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic and maybe a little bit more local, but like you were saying with Northeast Indiana, for Carroll and Belmont to find 6 competitive duels that they can wrestle on a weeknight, it's really not possible in Northeast Indiana right now. And I think it is important. I like what you guys are saying. We had our Super Duel with Perry, and there were maybe a dozen kids under the age of 10 or 12 there watching Belmont against 3 or 4 of the top 20 teams in the state. But when Belmont wrestles Columbia City, who we beat by maybe 30 or 40, there's 30, 40 elementary kids there for a duel on a weeknight. And those, I had a friend the other day ask me, how do I know when to start my kid wrestling? And I asked a couple coaches, and they all said, take them to a high school match, see if they like it. And if we don't give opportunities for those little kids, I think the smaller school programs are going to keep falling down, and the bigger programs may stay up. But a little bit worried about the smaller programs around the state, and the loss of Team State doesn't really affect them, but it's good to see the Coaches Association try to find a way to make those small schools more competitive with each other. And I think anything we can do to make that Team Coaches Association duels more competitive for the 1A and the 2A, I think that's only going to make those programs better in the coming years.
Yeah, Joe, I think I don't want to step on a landmine here, but coming from Portage and then going to Carmel, those are both two of the top 10 schools in the state enrollment-wise, and I'm not real passionate either way about whether they class the sport of wrestling, and obviously, that's not our decision. That's what the IHSA has to say. But I was always under the let's have one champ that makes it awesome. And in the CIA years, I went out to watch Connorsville to see Duckworth and Cody Phillips wrestle, and you look over in the match for 7th and 8th, and you're just watching the wrestling that's going on at Connorsville for 7th and 8th, and it just made me think that, the 32-team tournament, there's 25 guys below the wrestling that's happening over there at 7th and 8th. And when I left Connorsville for the first time, I went, yep, we probably need to do something to help the smaller schools in Indiana, because I believe that, like Dane said, it's the top 5% have really gotten better, and I think the average to below average programs are really becoming less competitive with the average to less than average programs to other states around, and it makes me think, well, what are we doing as a sport? And I think it's an accumulation of everything that we do, from wrestling Quinn duels every weekend, or we having home meets, but are we doing things to help support these guys at the lower level, at the smaller schools that got to fight every day to find a 113-pound kid in the school to just be on his team? And so I think if you can give those guys an opportunity to win a sectional and put that in their little newspaper, I think that would help grow the sport, which would help wrestling at the smaller levels. And I think at the end of the day, that would help Indiana as a whole. And now that's not something I feel insanely passionate about, because I think if you change the state tournament, we have the best tournament of any state championship in any sport. And I think if you mess with that, I'd be pretty passionate about keeping the state tournament the same. But if we can help some smaller schools get some support to get some more kids on their team and to get more people in their community excited about wrestling, I would be in huge favor of something like that.
Again, that's why the dual tournament is so important. I always, even going back to our first years at Center Grove, I always envisioned a 1A, 2A, 3A on mats, the three mats in the middle, championship at the same time. And I thought, a three-ring circus like that would be unbelievable for the sport. So, I think this is a step in the right direction. Obviously, classing it in the dual format, I think, and it's hard for me to speak for the smaller schools, but it would seem to me has done a lot for those schools.
Yeah, I know that, like, the coaches that I talked to, they were all excited about it, and they treat it like a state championship for their kids, and the kids get excited, and that's good for them, because that's you need to find things to build and get excitement about at your school. When I know, like, Churubusco, they're battling up against us for a sectional title, a school that's probably 4 times the size of them. So that's a monumental task, and the stars have to really be aligned for them to actually challenge for a sectional title. Then we also have teams like in Northrop, who has 2,000 kids. Also, they're not as good, but they still have 2,000 kids to pick from. They have to go up against another solid team. So I know when I was at Garrett, 2010-ish, the stars looked like they aligned. We had 14 kids, all separated, the right amount, kids that were ready to go, and we end up losing 3 kids due to injuries and such throughout the year. We lost 2 one the week before sectional, and it was we lost by 8 points. So that was I mean, Carroll was a little bit down, Whitco was pretty good, but they were still beatable. Things like that, I know. Building up stuff like that for the small schools will always help the sport. I mean, more kids wrestling isn't going to hurt anybody. So I definitely I definitely know that people realize that my stance is for a class system of some sort. Going from Carroll to Garrett has just been, it's I knew it was going to be different, but I didn't realize how different it was, and it's hard to even explain unless you've done it. I know, Coach Shante, you were at Tri-West, I believe. Is that right? When you first started out,
Yeah.
and then went up to. Was Perry your second job, or did you have somewhere else?
I had an opportunity to coach at Connorsville in the Spartan Classic. Eddie brought that up. I was an assistant at Ben Davis as well. So yeah, I've been around for a little, a few places.
Yeah, I mean that definitely opened your eyes. And I was at Northrop my first year, and the Fort Wayne City schools don't have middle school wrestling, and I didn't know that until I started coaching there, and that's a huge reason why the Fort Wayne area has kind of gone down, is the 3 or 4 biggest schools don't have middle school wrestling. And that's kind of hard to build a program when the first time they step on the mat is when they're 15 years old. So
I want to have a 15-year-old freshman. Those 15-year-old freshmen, where?
Some of them are. Some of them are 16 now. No.
Joe, like you were saying, a great example of what the 1A tournament does. The 1A tournament came down to the last match, AC Prairie Heights. The kid from AC was 5-20 last year, and he comes back out this year. He has a winning record now, but he may not advance out of sectional this year. He goes out and beats the kid from Prairie Heights and wins a state title for Adams Central, and is an absolute hero at home and in the newspaper and at school. And you can't recreate that in any other setting other than in the team duels that we put on a couple weeks ago.
Guys, the dual meet format is what has built our program. Our first state title, we had a kid that was between 2 weight classes, maybe 7th string, and he was a manager his freshman year. His brother was pretty good, but Sam the Tornado Tassif was not a stud, and we're wrestling Penn in the semifinals, and Massengale gets beaten. It's all but over. The Penn kid is a state qualifier the week before. The Tornado was a great kid, but just not that good a wrestler. And with about 30 seconds to go, he takes the kid down, puts him on his back, and the place is going nuts. And I mean, that kid doesn't even wrestle. If we don't have a team state, he's not even wrestling. We sold everything to our kids that you mean something. Somewhere along the line, you mean something. That's how important duels are.
No, I think the other part with the 1A stuff that you guys bring up, if I can quote Larry Tharp, the guy I coached with in Portage, people like winning. And you throw the Adams Central and the Prairie Heights programs, and you talk about those. I mean, it's not fair to throw those in the lineup against Carroll and some of those other bigger schools, and I get it. And I'm not a fan of, you can take the other end of the spectrum where people go, you got to water that, you're going to water it down, and you're going to water it down. I don't think so. If you make a level playing field and give enough opportunities for people to win, people like winning. And if the school can go home and say, hey, we won the sectional, that's awesome. And they go pick up 3 little kids for wrestling in their club because they take their sectional trophy around all their, or I guess it'd just be one elementary school in the little school corporation.
Yeah.
But if you can say to those guys, hey, look at this, and you can do those types of things, I think it's better for the sport. Like I said, I'm not going to slit a wrist trying to argue either side of the equation on this. It's not one that I'm majorly passionate about because I'd be real concerned about taking the state tournament out of Banker's life. But I think if you can do that in a way that gives other opportunities for people to win and people to go home and be excited about it, I think that'd be good for our sport.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at teams like Jimtown in football who just have that tradition, and they have 80 kids out for the. I mean, we played them numerous times in football, and you just look at their sideline and just packed from yard, from two deep kids are from 30-yard line to 30-yard line. They're packed, and this is a 2A school, small 3A school, and that's what happens when you build a tradition. And they don't care. They don't go around, oh, we're 2A champs. No, we're state champions. And whether it's 1A, 2A, 5A, 6A, whatever. So definitely make some great points. Got a couple other questions. We're gonna hopefully not quite as long. Great discussion. I definitely love hearing. It's interesting to see guys that are leaders in the sport kind of say that we gotta promote the sport and get good get things going at home before we can do a lot of big things. But one thing that I know comes up on the message board a lot is about the travel rule. I guess break this down into two parts. What do you think about it, and if it was changed, would you guys take advantage of it? Would you go to a tournament such as Ironman or Beast of the East or Cheesehead, things like that, or even even something a little bit closer? I'll let Ed comment on that. I know you guys travel out of state. If the travel rules changed in any way, would you guys kind of take advantage of it? Do you like it?
Yeah, I think so. We get to travel quite a bit with CIA, and there's a lot of benefits to that. And I think if you just look at the number of Indiana teams that go to Disney, the benefit of traveling, and if you have a chance to get your kids some exposure at a certain level. Now, I'm under the impression that the Ironman and the Beast of the East, those aren't. I can't imagine a situation where Carmel's going to say we're going to take all 14 cats and go out to the Beast of the East, because most people don't do that. And the ones that do that are not normal schools. We wrestled at Oak Park, and Mike Powell looked you in the face and go, "Yeah, I got an all-star team." He's got people from all over. And so, yeah, those guys show up as 14 people. But I can't see a benefit of Carmel being able to walk into the BCs with 14 guys. And you can't take a regional qualifier and go out to that tournament and get shellacked twice. No, but if there was an opportunity for us to go somewhere and we had the means to make it happen, I think travel is a little bit different than it was in the 40s when this rule was set. And it's done in a way that didn't mess with classroom. And I mean, the problem is how do you manage it? How do you take care of it? Because what happens if Carmel wants to go to Wyoming and we're going to take a bus and we're going to miss 4 days of school? Well, that's not good for kids. And so, I don't look at the IHSA and go, you crazy devil father of ours. Those guys got to make rules that follow everybody. And so, you can't make that rule and go, yeah, wrestling can travel, but basketball can't, because when LN had that Odin and those guys around, they were getting asked to go to tournaments in California and all these other places that there's big money involved to do that. You start talking TV contracts, and so there's a lot of things going on. And so I think it's pretty easy for us, again, as wrestling guys, to go, man, we should be able to travel to the Beast of the East. But I can understand why they have a rule like that. It's to keep the craziness that would happen in other sports. And so you got to have a rule there that fits everybody. And so would we travel? Yeah, if there was a good situation that would fit.
Sounds good. What do you think, Jim? I know a couple years ago you had a team with, 4 Fargo All-Americans and teams that were pretty good. Not that you don't have a good team now, but kids that were nationally ranked and such. And everyone, I know one of the message board topics was, how would Perry do at Ironman and such? Would you guys, go to tournaments like that and stuff? And what's your opinion on it?
Well, Eddie made some good points about keeping the craziness out of it. The rule though is outdated. We couldn't take every year's team to something like this, but I feel like a couple years ago we had a team that would have been fun to go see where we're at with that group, and there was 4 or 5 guys I think that could have could have went deep into those tournaments. So it would have been pretty cool to do that, and not being able to do it, was kind of a bummer. But I think that there's some things that could be changed in the rule. I think one of the things that kind of bothers me in the rule is that, it's not only that we can't travel. We could go to some places, but if a team from California is there, then we can't wrestle in it. And that's the kind of the thing that, I'm not sure why that rule's into place.
Jimmy, I don't think that's what the rule says. I believe the rule says that you can't wrestle a team from California, because it was explained to me from our administration that they have soccer tournaments at North Central that have teams from all over the country, and North Central just can't play those that are more than 360 miles out of their state. It's not that they can't be in that tournament. You just can't compete against those cats.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In an individual tournament, though,
Right.
How do you know what I'm saying? So that's the situation I'm talking about. Which to me, I don't quite get that. But I mean, Eddie's got a valid point. That where would this thing stop? And would we be missing school? What's the are we getting kids on planes and we're flying places? What are we doing? How much is it going to cost? But I do think that with some of our top kids, and we've had some kids get waivers and been able to do some things. I think that the IHSA needs to look at those kind of kids and allow some things, because we're only hurting their opportunities to further their education. So from that standpoint, I think that I don't think that I think the rule's outdated. I just think the rule's outdated, and I think that the IHSA needs to take a look at it again.
Yeah, I definitely I agree completely with both of you guys about the travel. I would be happy. I'd be more than elated if they just said that you can only travel within 300 miles and it doesn't matter who you play or wrestle or whatever sport, and it obviously needs to be for every sport. I mean, if we want to, I know when I was in college, Mater Dei went to Columbus, Ohio for some duels, and they couldn't wrestle a West Virginia team. I mean, West Virginia team's not really that far out. Number two, you're well within your range, so why can't you, that team's coming to meet you there. If a team from Florida and California wants to fly in to Indianapolis to wrestle Carmel and Perry Meridian, why can't they? I mean, it's on their expense. It doesn't affect you guys one bit, other than you guys get some good competition probably. So that's something, I mean, I would love for them just to say, you can play or whatever, any team. If any team wants to come to Fort Wayne to wrestle Carroll, California team wants to do that, so be it. Carroll can't travel to California, but they can go to Illinois and wrestle a bunch of good teams. So I definitely agree with you guys on that point, and hopefully I know football coaches and people kind of would like to see it changed a little bit, and they always point to the band. You guys, a band or choir, they go to Disney for a week, or they go, New York and stuff, and they don't have any kind of restrictions, and yet, sports do, and that's all up to, school administration, school boards, those kind of people.
Our robotics team travels. They travel, to Florida. They travel to several places during the school year. They take a week off of school and go compete in robotics. And to me, what's the difference?
Very good.
So, when I look at the IHSA as an organization, I can't imagine what that job is like. I can't imagine to sit there and go, okay, because with the exception of wrestling, I would bet that most sports have some crazy coaches that try to push the rules. And so outside of the wrestling people, the IHSA has to manage those other 25 sports. And so to have rules like the travel rule and moratorium and all those other types of things, I don't know what it's like to be in charge of the cross-country programs. And I don't know what cross-country coaches want when they present to the IHSA, but I can guarantee you that most of the sports, I would say all of the sports with the exception of wrestling, because we don't have any crazy coaches, but I guess that most of the sports have coaches that want in and go, we want more, we want more of this, we want more of this. And at some point, it's got to be the dad that goes no, and whether you don't get it or not, that's the house rule. Because I mean, to be able to watch and to police every sport, I can imagine what that's like. You know, and I can look at, you know, the thing that I'm most passionate about changing a rule is throwing in wrestlebacks to the semi-state level. I mean, and that it blows me away how that doesn't happen. But you ever look how tennis does their tournament? Tennis is just go, and when you're done, you're done. See you later. They're finding a champion, period. And so, you know, the IHSA has to look at stuff as a whole. And so, I can sit here and be a wrestling guy and hate on the rule maker and the guy that's in charge. But if I try to look at it from the guy in charge, I can't imagine what that's like. And I'm not going to be real quick to throw the stone. Now, change opinions every 3 weeks, that's frustrating at times. But I don't think it's possible for us as normal, average, everyday, education first wrestling coaches that we all are to understand what it's like to be the big brother or the father of all of the sports. And you've got to make a rule. And I'm sure Tante said, no, we're not having ice cream today, even though his youngest Tante, it's his turn to get ice cream, but he's made the, nope, you can't get ice cream today because there's a no ice cream rule. And it doesn't make any sense to CJ because Tristan got ice cream the other day, and I need to know how much because I need to know if he's going to make 82 or not. Tante rule, ice cream is no ice cream today. I got it. CJ might not get it, but that's just the rule today.
You know, Eddie, I had a feeling if you were my dad, I'd have been sneaking out of the house a lot.
Oh, geez. I have a feeling you'd be grounded a lot, too.
Yeah, I would.
No, that's, I mean, very good points. I do, I mean.
I wouldn't sneak out past 150 miles, though.
I mean, I really can't imagine how many emails Bobby Cox and Robert Falcons get a day from coaches, administrators, and stuff. And I mean, I know how many guys where I work, where I work get how many emails they get, and I'm like, I don't know how you manage that. That's like half your day managing emails and things like that. So, and that doesn't include meetings and all that other fun stuff you got to deal with. So, very good points. I mean, the one thing I always kind of stick on is how many teams changing this rule. How many teams would it really affect in each sport? I mean, a handful of teams in wrestling, you know, might, you know, try to do something. Handful of teams in cross country, handful of basketball teams. It's not going to affect, you know, when you're thinking there's 300-400 schools in Indiana, how many is this going to affect? You know, 10 or 20 maybe total, things like that. It's probably not going to affect that many. So it's not. I mean, it's not one of those things that's high priority. So definitely, you know, it's a good.
Jimmy might know better because I was just in Indianapolis when Odin was playing at LN, and that was crazy with ESPN there. You know, a couple times a month, and where those guys and the invitations some of those guys had. I mean, somebody closer to LN administration might be able to understand. I mean, I think saying if Pear Meridian wants to go wrestle in the Cheesehead up in Wisconsin, that's probably a little bit different than what LN was dealing with Odin comes around, and you know the kind of commitments and you know what happens and what money's involved with that. Who gets that money? Where does that money go? What's the potential of crooked money? And so, you know, to look at who's going to benefit being able to travel, you know, okay, the 40 sports, you know, every other year in Indiana across all of the different sports. But, you know, then you throw in the insane basketball comes along, and you got to go, well, we're not going to let them because they're dealing with crooked money or they're dealing with stuff that's not fair. They're, you know, just, I mean, and so I think that's just in a realm of I can sit here and try to pretend what it's like to be a billionaire. I don't have the slightest idea what it's like to be a billionaire, and I can sit there and try to say what it's like to change dietary rules, and I've got nothing on changing those because I can't imagine trying to make a rule that's good for everybody. And I would have a belt named Jimmy, and I would crush him every time he's out of the house.
Hey, just as long as it's not the big belt buckle. You know, when I grabbed that belt buckles, as long as it wasn't that.
You mean you got to meet that belt buckle a couple times, or?
I sure did.
Nice. Okay. One last question. We're going a little bit long. I definitely appreciate you guys doing this. This is another loaded question. I know you guys kind of saw this, but one of the big things, that Coaches Association, we're getting, I think we're getting a better rap with with the IHSA, which is always a good thing. Would either of you guys ever? I mean, I know Ed, you've kind of been in it a little bit with running for president a couple times. Would either of you guys be interested in some type of leadership position, whether even if it's not president, but something of a advisor type thing, position, something that can help get us better reputation with the IHSA and get get us keep us moving forward like we have been the past 10, 15 years.
I got two things to say about that, Joe. One, I can't even leave my own house. My wife tells me what to do. And number two, Bobby Cox has me on speed dial, and for all the wrong reasons. So I don't know.
Well, that's not good then.
No, in seriousness, it's kind of tough, honestly, when you're maintaining and building the program with the numbers that we have and what we try to do at our program. I would love to be an ambassador to the sport. I would love to put more time. I'm on the ISWA board. I do some different things, coach out of season, with that kind of stuff with Team Indiana. But it's just so difficult to put the time into the program that I'm with, and then try to do these other things. I know that's being a little bit selfish, but at the same time, I have to take care of home. So would I like to do that? Yes, I would love to be part of helping to continue to have this sport work with the IHSA and build in the areas it needs to build in and that kind of thing. But it's tough to do.
Yep, I agree. There's a lot of time. I mean, I know I've seen you pretty much any ISWA event I've been at. It's in the Indy area. You or at least 7 of your assistants are there. So it's definitely not for. It's not that you have a whole lot of time, especially even out of season. So I mean, not a bad thing to be doing. I mean, that should be your sole focus is on your program, and obviously even higher than that is your family, keeping all 12 of your kids in line, if they're even remotely like you.
Yeah. Put the big one on a scale.
What'd you say there, Ed?
I said put the biggest one on a scale.
I'm thinking heavyweight.
Good.
He must be gaining by the second. He was at 220 a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Ed, what's your kind of
I just ordered a pizza.
on the IHS, being in some type of leadership position?
It's attractive, but there's a lot of hope. There's a lot going on with something like that. One, I don't really know very much. A couple years ago, when I was pretty passionate about wrestlebacks at the semi-state level, and I still am, and that's one that I probably won't let go. And I just went, we can sit there and fight, be pissed off about stuff, or you can start to be proactive about fixing things. And so, I kind of looked into doing something like that, and as I started to stare down that road, I think it's a little bit more difficult than winning an election and starting to talk to the IHSAA about things. I think there's a big picture of things that have gone on and that go on now that I would like to be a part of that. And I think I'm pretty good at politicking and playing the game and doing things like that, and it's very attractive. The thing that's very unattractive about that is in the hour and 17 minutes that I've been here, I've gotten 4 text messages from a clerk of shit I didn't get done today because I might be the least organized guy on the planet. And so, to look at, like I said, walking in and watching the team state tournament 2 weekends ago and watching McCormick put that stuff together, that guy might be the most organized guy alive. And so I think you have to have a specific skill set of things to be involved with that. And that's not something that I brag about because I'm serious, Joe. I might be the best organized guy alive. And so to do something like that, again, just sitting here in a chair going, yeah, that's super awesome. I know what I would do. I know what I think I would do, but I don't know all the pieces that are in play to that puzzle. And so I don't know how attractive that is going forward. I don't know, the hands you need to shake and the right persons that you need to be able to communicate with and get information from. But that's something that I would look into going forward. I know I'm not in a position right now to be moving towards anything like that. We've got a long way to go in Greyhound land. We've got to spend all hands on deck doing this stuff now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know you were nominated a few years ago. I don't know how many years. It's one of the times. So definitely. I mean, I think either of you guys would be good.
I got nominated and then found out later that I wasn't allowed because I didn't coach at a school.
Ah,
I think is the way that happened. I'm not really sure.
yeah. So anyway, very good points. I know I've been asked by a couple of people, and I'm probably in the same line as Jim. I'd be away too much, and that gives the wife too many hours to write up those papers and take half my paycheck. She already takes half of it, so I at least get to see a little bit of it. So I mean, especially with coaching and running this little website, that takes a little bit of time and stuff. So with that, I want to touch on Dane came in a little bit late. I want to have him talk about his team rankings since he just sent those to me the other day. A little bit, any updates and any team rankings. I'll let you ramble on about that before we close everything up.
No, not really. Just sort of adjusting the team rankings to what we saw at the state duels. Lots of discussion on about 10 through 15, which is Brownsburg, Avon, Cathedral, Belmont, and Carroll. There seems to have been a round robin with those 5 teams. They've all beaten somebody that's ahead of them, but all lost to somebody that's behind them. It seemed like so. But Brownsburg and Avon are definitely 2 clubs that are on the rise, and they're not at the bottom of the top 20 anymore. They're right in the middle, and they're going to start working their way up to the top 10, I think, as we go year for year. Castle's another team that's jumped into the top 20 over the last 2 ranking sessions. They don't make their way up as far north as I'd like them to have them get some duels against some of the other teams. So it's hard to place them, but I have them at 16 right now. And Jennings County is another team that hasn't been in the top 20 the last couple of years that has jumped in. They won the invite at New Pal. They finished top 4 or 5 at Mooresville. Won the Jeff Classic, and they've had a real strong year. I think they've only lost. No, they might be undefeated in duels. So it's good to see them. And it was nice to see Franklin come back and win a match at the team state and jump back into the top 20. As far as the 2A and the 1A, those fell pretty well in line to the way we had them seated. Thankfully, had fingers crossed that we weren't going to get them completely wrong. But the 1A teams are so hard to rank because one week they've got 4 forfeits and the next week they've got a full lineup, and week to week it's a 24-point swing depending on who's in and who's out. So I know there was some discussion on Oak Hill on why they moved into 1A. Joe and I basically had the discussion that we were going to start ranking the teams after team state based on the way the classes would most likely fall for this classification that we're going to start talking about here in 2 weeks when sectional starts. So if anybody's watching and wondering why that is, right now we have Oak Hill, as you divide them evenly by 3, and you move Evansville Mater Dei up to 3A. Right now Oak Hill is in 1A, so we're going to start ranking them in 1A for the last 2 weeks here.
Okay, sounds good. I think Ed must have gone to the potty or something. Doing his hair again. Want to wrap this up since we've gone pretty long. Thank you, Jim, for coming in again. I'll try not to bother you as the season goes on too much.
That's fine. I enjoy it.
I definitely enjoyed hearing you talk, and you're not shy about your opinions, and you have a couple years of experience, it seems, and very valid reasons for everything. That nothing I would disagree with, and I doubt anyone else is gonna, that's faulty logic or anything. Ed, also want to thank you for joining us again, and hopefully Wade gets you set straight and get you organized.
He'll whine until he does.
Hey
Text
Eddie,
me.
I got to say something. Eddie, did Wade's telling you to get things in order? Okay, can we can officially drop Super Falcon and call him Super Greyhound now, right?
Absolutely. He is
Okay.
a super greyhound.
All right.
And we've got 3 more years, we'll fight over the little one.
There we go.
Nice. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Mike and Dane, for also coming in. We'll probably be back in next week. Got some more good results coming in, and excited for the next few weeks.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.